So what's his profession and what qualifications does he have to make what he says credible?
What do you mean by credible? Like, as in provable? Well, he does experiments all the time. He does. Well, not, he doesn't. He gets other people to do it, and generally, he's a big fan of the block button as well. Like, if it goes back to the old adage, if you win a fight without having to fight, you've won the fight, doesn't it? Like, so if someone challenges him and his beliefs and wants to debate with him, what he does is he just blocks them, runs off. Therefore, he never lost. So because he doesn't lose, there's only two options here, isn't there? There's win or lose. We know he hasn't lost, so winning is probably the only way you can quantify it. But I'm not a referee, so I tend to stay out of these sorts of things. But we are all quite happy to just insist that he wins every debate that we have on his behalf.
And what about all the other scientists that say it's not flat?
I would say right back at that, they're just paid NASA shills. As a rule, anyone that doesn't agree with what we're saying must, by default, just be a paid actor or a shill or generally just a contrarian. There's nothing worse than a contrarian that just everything you say, they just ultimately they're just trying to find something to contrary to you. You know, that's not what I'm about at all. Obviously, that's not why I'm here. But you get people coming up with a lot of education, a lot of research, and that's a sure sign that they're in somebody's back pocket somewhere. They've all got an agenda at the end of the day. They've all got this big agenda to fuck with me and everyone else that they want to fuck with for a laugh. It's sad. I've got a bit of sympathy for them, to be honest. They just sit around all day, every day, dedicating their life to this sort of stuff, and it's just futile. But, you know, it's their life.
Are there any other factors that have influenced you?
Confirmation bias. That's your ally in this sort of thing. Because what you'll find is you're going to be in an environment where you'll be looking for stuff, and if you don't specifically go for stuff that already back up what you think, you run the risk of coming up to contrary information, and that's the devil in the context of debating stuff like this. So if you can summon the powers of confirmation bias, kind of like a superpower, then you're well equipped to follow me down the rabbit hole.
And what about your friends and family? What do they think of this?
My friends, they don't really understand. I used to have more friends than I do now, if I'm being honest. I've got new friends now. My old friends were the kinds of friends that let you go to a nightclub and get drunk out of your head wearing white trousers. What about when you shit yourself? You know, and I found out those are the kinds of friends I had, and I've got new friends now, and they all think the Earth is flat as well, which helps our friendship, admittedly. They all kind of look up to me a bit as well because I was in there first, so they're very in awe of me. Like, it's how I picture them to be looking at me when they see me. But yeah, that's pretty rewarding, knowing that everyone that believes you is also of the same mindset as you.
You seem quite isolated from the world outside the conspiracy movement. How do you feel about that?
Isolated in what way? I mean, isolation is all in the mind. I like to keep my mind very narrow, if you know what I mean. I find that helps with the stuff that I believe. The narrower the vision, the more focused the vision, as the old saying goes.
So, what is the ultimate goal here? What exactly are you striving for?
The truth, of course, and for the truth to be universally accepted. I'm not some sort of dictator. People have used words similar to that to describe me, but I want to see it taught in schools, up there with the globe model, for a full range of how can you be inclusive, which is what all these, radical left schools want these days, without also teaching flat Earth.
So do you see this as a radical subject?
Personally, no, but I can see why people think it is. Because from their point of view, they've just been minding their own business, and someone like me has come along and gone, you're wrong about everything you thought you knew, which is quite a bitter pill to swallow at first, Do you remember when you watched The Last Matrix for the first time and you realised that Neo was actually in a perpetual loop that he couldn't get out of, in spite of the fact that his whole life he'd believed that he was the chosen one once he was released, obviously. It's kind of like that. The Matrix is a great film because we've been able to reference it loads, Some say it's just a film, sure, but why would you end up making a film about something that wasn't real, ultimately? Which leads you to question every film that's ever been made, really, doesn't it? So I'm probably not the one to tell you whether or not it's radical based on everything. I'll let you decide that. Like, you're actually very fortunate. You get to be the first person to follow me around. Like, in this disinformation era, that is very sought after, I promise you.
Disinformation? What do you mean by disinformation?
The disinformation era. So, right now, you had like the Iron Age, the Bronze Age, the Industrial Age. Now we've got the disinformation age. And it's terrifying because you see so many people for so long have been believing something, modelling their whole life around it. And who's to say what is disinformation and what isn't? I generally refer to it as anything that doesn't fit what I'm saying. So you could say one fact, and you might think you're right, but if it doesn't appeal to me, I can just sort of blank it out and go, disinformation. And that's the world we live in right now. Because I live in a world where everything's a conspiracy, because that's kind of the only way you can digest some of them, is if you think that everything around you is or could be a conspiracy theory. What you might think of as perfectly harmless technology advancing, civilization advancing, telecoms equipment, I see as a death weapon, potentially. And that way, if it is a death weapon in the future, I can be like, I told you so. I was the first there. And the best way to avoid fear is to fear everything. Then nothing makes you afraid. If everything you see could potentially kill you, be a threat, be government controlled, it sort of takes the edge off it. You're desensitized, if you will, to real dangers.